Okay, union action time. So, SAG-AFTRA has called for a strike against League of Legends, and this has been a little bit confusing for a bunch of people, so I'm going to try and attempt to clear some of it up for you, why this is happening, how it happened, and what it actually means for us. And the good news, I'll say first of all, this is probably not going to mean very much to us, right? Like, I doubt strongly that this is going to result in anything being delayed for us. It's not going to affect Arcane. It's not going to affect the League of Legends World Championships. It's not going to affect... Probably not going to delay legendary skins or new champions or anything like that. Well, except in the utmost consequence. But from our perspective, nothing bad is going to happen from this, right? Like, it's like... This is not gonna interfere with us getting any of our little gamer treats from Riot Games, so don't worry about that. But it is going to cause some problems both for Riot Games and for the studio in question. So, SAG-AFTRA are in a conflict with a studio called Formosa Interactive LLC. Now, Formosa Interactive LLC is a audio production company, basically, and what they provide is, especially for the video games industry, a whole fuck ton of voice acting and voice production. If you go to their website and check it out, they've done stuff like, I think, for Helldivers, for God of War Ragnarok, League of Legends, some Call of Duty games, they are a pretty big sort of stalwart company within the games industry that provides a whole bunch of voice acting services. What SAG alleges is that Formosa has tried to cancel one of its struck video game projects shortly after the start of SAG-AFTRA's video game strike. When they were told that was not possible, they secretly transferred the game to a shell company and sent out casting notices for non-union talent only. So basically, Formosa had some kind of video game project. SAG-AFTRA was in a project of, in a process of union negotiation with them. As part of that negotiation, there had been a strike, so SAG-AFTRA was refusing to provide union talent for the video game in question. And Formosa, rather than come to the table and negotiate with SAG-AFTRA, just kind of went, okay, we're going to pull some fuckery here. We're going to transfer the project into a shell company, and then we're going to use that fake shell company to send out a casting call for non-union members, and then we're going to complete the project without having to deal with the union contract, right? And that's union busting. That is that's an attempt to circumvent the union's negotiating authority. It's an attempt to undercut the union. It's a very hostile tactic when it comes to union negotiations. And SAG-AFTRA does not take that kind of thing lightly, because if they did, then they wouldn't have any power in negotiations. So SAG-AFTRA has responded to this, to Formosa trying a genuinely extremely scummy business move to just try and avoid having to negotiate with the union. SAG-AFTRA has said, okay, in retaliation for that, we're going to strike one of your major clients, right? Yeah, you work for Riot Games on League of Legends? Cool. League of Legends can now no longer get any services from any SAG-AFTRA members until you come to the table and, behave yourself and amend what you have done to our union members, right? And that is why SAG-AFTRA is striking League of Legends. League of Legends does not belong to Formosa LLC. It belongs to Riot Games, with whom SAG-AFTRA is not currently in a direct conflict. But they are striking League of Legends because that is one of Formosa's big clients. That's something SAG-AFTRA will know from its members, that Formosa does a whole bunch of work for Riot. They do a whole bunch of work on League of Legends. So in order to put pressure on Formosa, in order to hurt them, in order to retaliate against their unfair business practices, they are targeting one of Formosa's big contracts, making Formosa unable to deliver on the work that they want to do for Riot Games, right? That's the point of this, is that it's an attempt to interfere with Formosa's ability to do business as usual and make money. There's also another point to it, though. Because I've seen people be confused about this. Why are they striking League of Legends? Do they think Formosa owns League of Legends? Formosa doesn't own League of Legends. This is stupid. Why are you striking them? Well, no. They're not striking League of Legends because Formosa owns it. They're striking League of Legends because it is a source of profit for Formosa, and also for another reason. For this reason specifically, SAG-AFTRA strikes League of Legends over company actions, and SAG-AFTRA calls for a strike against League of Legends. That is why also that they struck League of Legends, because League of Legends is a massive, internationally successful, multi-billion-dollar, enormous video game. They've got Arcane Season 2 coming out right now. They've got the World's 2024 tournament going on right now. If they suddenly become the subject of a strike from a massive acting union in the US, that generates headlines. And that is part of the point of striking against League of Legends specifically, is not only does it interfere with Formosa's business, it creates a whole bunch of bad press for them. And a company like Formosa, being a subcontractor, being an outsourcing studio, part of their business is to be a little bit quiet, is to not get too famous, not get too much in the news, and not to interfere with like the PR that the companies themselves want to do. And this puts a really, really uncomfortable spotlight on Formosa itself, and on its business practices. Because if SAG-AFTRA had just been in a conflict with Formosa, right? Like this sort of, nobody's ever heard of Formosa LLC before if you're not in the voice acting industry. It's like, oh yeah, like SAG-AFTRA in conflict with outsourcing studio. Is like, that's not a headline. No one gives a shit about that. Like The Verge isn't going to put up a headline about SAG-AFTRA being in conflict with some voice acting provider studio. But SAG-AFTRA has struck League of Legends international multi-billion-dollar product, like right in the middle of League of Legends being a hot ticket item in the SEO. That generates headlines, and those headlines force a response from Riot Games itself, who put this out, like, I think, was it yesterday? A couple of days ago. League of Legends has nothing to do with the complaint mentioned in SAG-AFTRA's press release. We want to be clear, since becoming a union project 5 years ago, League of Legends has only asked Formosa to engage with union performers in the US and has never once suggested doing otherwise. In addition, we've never asked Formosa to cancel a game that we've registered. All of the allegations in the SAG-AFTRA press release relating to canceling a game or hiring non-union talent relate to a non-Riot game and have nothing to do with League or any of our games. So, Riot here clearly are visibly a little bit annoyed that a bunch of people read SAG-AFTRA's press release and then assumed that Riot themselves had cancelled something, right? And that's understandable. That was something that was left vague in the press release. I think possibly on purpose in order to force this exact kind of thing to happen, to force Riot to spend their own PR resources to sort of clear up the story before it, like, creates a problem for them in their own community, which is like slightly dirty on the union's part, but it's also very effective, because what SAG-AFTRA has forced Riot Games to do now is put out a press release that says, we support SAG-AFTRA, we support the union, we will never suggest that a company that we work with try and undercut the unions. We've never asked Formosa to cancel a game that we've registered. All of the games in SAG-AFTRA's press release relating to canceling a game or hiring non-union talent relate to a non-Riot game and have nothing to do with us, right? Basically, Riot has been forced publicly to distance themselves not only from Formosa itself, but also from Formosa's business practices, right? Like Riot in this press release are clearly saying, we would never do that. We don't think that's an okay thing to do. We don't want anything to do with this, and we don't want to get in the fight with the union. Right, like this is like, they're a little annoyed that they're sort of getting roped into this because they don't want to be roped into this, but they are also clearly taking SAG-AFTRA's side in the conflict, not directly by saying Formosa should stop doing this or we'll drop the contract, but in the sense of saying we would never do something like what the union is alleging has been done, which signals that what Formosa did is, in Riot's eyes, unacceptable business practices. And that makes sense, because Riot doesn't want to get in trouble with SAG-AFTRA. Again, they are constantly working on new legendary skins, new champions. They are probably currently developing like whatever TV series is going to follow up after Arcane. They are probably working on a bunch of stuff in their R&D department. If they got into a major conflict with SAG-AFTRA where they struck the entirety of Riot Games, that could actually create some real problems for them in conducting their business. Riot doesn't want to do that, so clearly here they are sort of trying to distance themselves from the whole situation, saying, this has nothing to do with us, we don't want to be a part of it, we don't think it's okay either, leave us alone, please leave us out of this. And that's a pretty major PR win for SAG-AFTRA, because now Formosa LLC has become a problem for Riot Games. Now they have become a problem for one of their major clients. Now, because of their business practices, they have created a problem for one of their major clients, which creates a real incentive for Riot. If, like, Formosa can't get together with the union and resolve this conflict, Riot's best course of action is probably just to drop them and find another company that will work with the union, get them the actors they need without all of this fucking trouble, right? And that's the threat that's hanging over Formosa's head right now, is that they are at a risk of possibly losing a major client if they can't, like, make this shit go away by coming to the table and negotiating with the union. That is also a part of the pressure tactic. It's not just about, like, having a private, quiet conflict with one company and, like, you talk it out amongst yourselves. It's about creating a ruckus, creating a bunch of PR problems, and putting a spotlight on bad business practices as a warning to anyone else who might want to try it. This is also putting up a signal to any other company like Formosa who are thinking of trying something similar. SAG-AFTRA has now put out a signal that says, yeah, if you try that, we will find whoever your biggest client is, and then we will make them blame you for getting into trouble with the union. Right? That's part of the pressure tactic. Now, whether or not this is going to work, I don't know. I'm not I'm not I'm not a video game industry expert on that level. I would imagine that Formosa is currently under pretty substantial pressure to come to the table. I would imagine that there's probably gonna come a call from Riot Games to whoever is in charge at Formosa saying, could you please make this fucking go away? What the fuck are you doing? We don't want this causing trouble for us, right? I would imagine that there's going to be pressure on Formosa to come to the table and, like, stop engaging in whatever, like, shitty business practices that they've got going on that's making the union mad. But who knows? Like I said at the start of the video, though, this probably isn't going to affect us at all, right? In the sense of new legendary skins probably still going to come out on time because they've been in the pipeline for a while already. Like, the voice acting for that has probably been in the can for a while. Probably not going to prevent any new champions from coming out on time. Probably not going to cause any problems for whatever other products Riot is working on. Probably none of that because, first of all, those pipelines are pretty damn long. And second of all, I think probably Formosa are going to want to deal with this real quick, and if they can't deal with it really quick, I expect that Riot will probably just find someone else to provide their services. Like, it sort of depends. If some fucking executive at Riot has a buddy-buddy relationship with some executive at Formosa, if it's like this is his golfing buddy and, like, they went to, I don't know, Alpha Kappa Pi fraternity together, maybe Riot will try and double down on this. Maybe Riot will try and support, like, Formosa through this and refuse to let go of their contract, and it'll be a longer conflict. And maybe then there will be some delay to something somewhere down the line if, like, they really double down and decide to fight this. I don't see why they would, though. But yeah, that's basically what's going on. Formosa tried to get away with doing some shitty, unethical union-busting practices, and SAG-AFTRA struck back against them by getting them in trouble with their biggest client. It's fully just a negotiation and pressure tactic. It's a PR tactic. It's a way of wrangling press attention to this conflict to put more pressure on the company to resolve it quickly and quietly. And as far as I can tell, it's worked. Like, this honestly, a really savvy, smart move from SAG-AFTRA. Like, this is a really smart way to cause as much trouble as possible for the company with whom they are in conflict. And that's a really good way to, like, ensure that when Formosa comes to the table, they will know that they can't play hardball. Like, they have to come to the table, they have to negotiate reasonably with SAG-AFTRA in order to, like, be able to resume their business as usual. It should also be noted that one of the major, like, SAG-AFTRA had a major strike not too long ago that you may remember, right? That was mostly over the issue of residuals and, like, creating a better deal for actors in the age of streaming, right? Like, if you're a part of a Netflix show and that Netflix show gets huge and gets millions and millions and millions of views, it gets watched and watched and watched, and, like, lots of DVDs get sold or, like, whatever. Probably not a lot of DVDs, but, like, if that generates a whole bunch of sales after the premiere and stuff like that, if you were on TV, you would get residuals for that as an actor, right? Like, you'd get a little bit of a cut of every time that show is replayed, and every time it's replayed, you'd get a little tiny bit of stuff, like, going into, like, a residuals check. And if you are in a bunch of shows that get replayed a whole bunch because they have a lot of fans because you did a really good job as an actor, you can make a decent little income out of that. Like, you could make a living on the residuals of the stuff that you've been in. Streaming doesn't work like that, or didn't work like that. Streaming, you get one fee for being in the show, and then you get fuck all forever, right? So even if you're one of the stars of something like, for example, Stranger Things, like one of the most massively popular shows in years, you can end up getting less money for your work than someone who's in, like, a third-rate fucking CSI spin-off on NBC or whatever, wherever the hell they air those things, because you don't have a residuals contract that ensures that you get continuous payment every single time the show that you're in generates revenue for the company that you made it for, right? That was the objective of the previous major strike, was to try and negotiate better contracts for actors in the age of streaming. The current wave of strikes, especially in the video games industry, relates a lot to generative AI, with actors, especially voice actors, being very, very worried that they are going to be required to sign over the rights to their voices in order for companies to use them to create generative AI models of the characters that they play, so that, much in the same way, if the company's like, oh, we need the actor to come in and record a bunch of lines for the DLC for our video game, instead of bringing in the actor to actually record lines, they can just have the fucking AI do it to cut the actor out of the deal, and deprive them of a whole bunch of revenue for their work without, like, and still be able to use the actor's voice in their work regardless, right? There's been a bunch of those contracts coming out, with a bunch of contracts trying to rope especially inexperienced young actors into signing over their likeness rights, signing over the rights to their likeness in AI generation in perpetuity without compensation. And the union now, SAG-AFTRA, has been pressured. Like, there was something that a lot of people were upset that SAG didn't secure in the previous round of strikes. So the new round of strikes is, a lot of it is about that. I don't know if that's specifically what's happening with Formosa. Like, if Formosa really, really wanted, like, the AI rights to the actors that they were trying to screw over here, or whatever the fuck was going on. But that's a big part of the strike wave right now. It's actors trying to secure that, like, if their voices are going to get cloned by AI, at least they want residuals, right? Like, so that if their cloned voice is used in a project, that at least they get some fucking pay for it. Some pay that's, like, reasonable for the studio to be able to use their voice and their likeness to generate revenue, that some small cut of it will go to the actor who actually provided that fucking voice in the first place, right? So yeah, hopefully, like, the thing about this is that if this is successful, if SAG-AFTRA can manage to do this to Formosa, that's one of those, like mange begge små laver en stor, that's one of those, like many little streams make a great river, right? Like, a rising tide lifts all boats, that sort of thing. Where if the union can do this, if they can bully Riot Games into making their subcontractor Formosa Interactive cave to the union's demands, that builds a lot of union power, right? Like, that allows for a lot of cultural clout and a lot of, like, negotiating power for the union in the future. And that hopefully will lead to a general support for, like, the increased wave of unionization that is hitting the games industry right now. And that can't happen fucking fast enough, because I've spent the past 2 years at this point just seeing people I know get laid off over and over and over again in the games industry, and it's really fucking depressing. So, like, the fact that a union is able to take the fight to any company and create this much trouble for them in terms of PR, that's just encouraging to me. I want there to also be a games workers union that, like, includes, like, programmers and, like, artists and all of those people, and not just, like, the actors and the voice actors, which is mostly what SAG-AFTRA does. Those unions are slowly being built, and hopefully SAG-AFTRA will show them the solidarity that they need to create, like, a united front against unfair labor practices. The dream is that eventually there will be unions for, like, all the programmers and all, like, the QA testers and, like, the designers and, like, the artists and everyone else who works on a video game. All of them will have unions that are in solidarity and in network with each other, who can put combined pressure on companies in this way in order to secure the rights of the workers against the interests of the corporations. This is a step in that process, right? Like, this isn't something that relates directly to games workers necessarily as such, like, for most of the people who work on video games, but this kind of victory is the kind of thing that slowly builds union power as a whole. So I'm very glad to see it. I think it's a very savvy move by SAG-AFTRA. I hope they keep creating problems for the games industry in this way and force them to come to the negotiating table, because that would be good for everyone. But yeah, that's why SAG-AFTRA is currently in a conflict with League of Legends. Not because Riot did anything, but because a company that works on League of Legends did something, and striking at League of Legends is a really big, juicy, and headline-generating target that makes for a very good pressure tactic against the company that is misbehaving. Hope that helps clear things up for you, and hopefully people will be posting less information about this on Twitter now. I'm not holding my breath, but, you know. Anyway, bye!